deadly riots over the government's plan to avoid defaulting on its loans.
Is that the unemployment keeps rising, and it has to keep rising just because you have an excess supply of goods, which is
this is all borrowed money that our
and that debt is owned by banks in other countries.
issuing about $1 trillion
Still
in bonds.
Including right here at home.
In the form of a convenient personal loan. A filter cigarette that delivers the taste, and 45 malt liquor.
Are you hot?
Quite some time ago, by a section of
America is sponsoring
I first learned it from my grandmother. Now, my grandmother was a wonderful person. She taught me how to play the game Monopoly. She understood that the name of the game is to acquire. She would accumulate everything she could, and eventually she became the master of the board. And then she would always say the same thing to me. She'd look at me and she'd say, "One day, you'll learn to play the game." One summer, I played Monopoly almost every day, all day long. And that summer, I learned to play the game. I came to understand the only way to win is to make a total commitment to acquisition. I came to understand that money and possessions, that's the way that you keep score. And by the end of that summer, I was more ruthless than my grandmother. I was ready to bend the rules if I had to win that game. And I sat down with her to play that fall. I took everything she had. I watched her give her last dollar and quit in utter defeat. And then she had one more thing to teach me. Then she said, "Now it all goes back in the box." All those houses and hotels, all the railroads and utility companies, all that property and all that wonderful money. Now it all goes back in the box. None of it was really yours. You got all heated up about it for a while. But it was around a long time before you sat down at the board. And it will be here after you're gone. Players come and players go. Houses and cars, titles and clothes, even your body. Because the fact is that everything I clutch and consume and hoard is going to go back in the box, and I'm going to lose it all. You have to ask yourself, when you finally get the ultimate promotion, when you've made the ultimate purchase, when you buy the ultimate home, when you have stored up financial security and climbed the ladder of success to the highest rung you can possibly climb it, and the thrill wears off, and it will wear off, then what? How far do you have to walk down that road before you see where it leads? Surely you understand, it'll never be enough. So you have to ask yourself the question, what matters?
So the other night I was going to stream this movie, Zeitgeist Moving Forward, and it revolves around the Venus Project. What you just watched there was the introduction to the movie. Now the reason I wanted to live stream this instead of put it up is because I know what kind of person Peter Joseph, the guy who made the movie, is, and I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to flag down the video just out of spite. So that was why I wanted to live stream it. I had some technical issues, and I ended up having to cancel the stream, and I apologize to everyone that was there. I know there's some people that showed up really early, and frankly, that took me off guard. But anyway, I'm just going to go over the Venus Project in general. I recommend everyone watch the movie. You don't have to watch it before watching this video, but I do recommend watching it because I think there's a lot to learn about leftist thinking, because a lot of leftist thinking is very utopian, and this is basically the epitome of utopianism. Really, it is. They can deny it all they want. But what I like about this intro in particular is the way that they use sort of an anti-capitalist aesthetic that portrays it as a wasteland. The beginning speech about monopoly there, it comes from a pastor, I believe. I forget his name right off. But they do a very good job at presenting the problems of materialism, presenting the problems of capitalism. But the solutions, of course, much like many other leftist ideologies, like Marxism, for instance, the solutions fall short of solving the problems. And so, I just want to show you that I like the aesthetic, the dull, drab wasteland. He's waking up. He's waking up to the fact that everything around him is empty and bleak, and he's walking around and he sees the vain materialism, the sloth, the gluttony, the self-indulgence. And while he's traversing this wasteland and walking through the society, the guy in the suit there, he also kind of understands, like, there's this antisocial element to it where he's all alone. He's surrounded by people and yet at the same time alone. And yeah, it's very good. They make a lot of very good arguments. So yeah, the format of the video, it sort of moves from human nature to financial critiques of capitalism and so on. But the movie itself is just sort of a presentation of the Venus Project, which is a movement of sorts that dates back much earlier. In fact, back to the 1930s by a man named Jacques Fresco. So the reason I broke this up like this is because I want to show you the beginning I wanted to show you that intro, and now I'm going to show you the intro, which sort of leads into the creator of the Venus Project. So what you're gonna hear next is the voice of Jacques Fresco.
When I was a young man growing up in New York City, I refused to pledge allegiance to the flag. Of course, I was sent to the principal's office, and he asked me, "Why don't you want to pledge allegiance? Everybody does." I said, "Everybody once believed the earth was flat, but that doesn't make it so." I explained that America owed everything it has to other cultures and other nations, and that I would rather pledge allegiance to the earth and everyone on it. Needless to say, it wasn't long before I left school entirely, and I set up a lab in my bedroom. There I began to learn about science and nature. I realized then that the universe is governed by laws, and that the human being, along with society itself, was not exempt from these laws. Then came the crash of 1929, which began what we now call the Great Depression. I found it difficult to understand why millions were out of work, homeless, starving, while all the factories were sitting there. The resources were unchanged. It was then that I realized that the rules of the economic game were inherently invalid. Shortly after came World War II, where various nations took turns systematically destroying each other. I later calculated that all the destruction and wasted resources spent on that war could have easily provided for every human need on the planet. Since that time, I have watched humanity set the stage for its own extinction. I have watched as the precious finite resources are perpetually wasted and destroyed in the name of profit and free markets. I have watched the social values of society be reduced into a base artificiality of materialism and mindless consumption. And I have watched as the monetary powers control the political structure of supposedly free societies. I'm 94 years old now, and I'm afraid my disposition is the same as it was 75 years ago. This shit's got to go.
Now, Fresco advocated for what he called a resource-based economy, and this was an international allocation of resources that was based primarily on a sort of an interwoven network of supercomputers contained at the center of every major city in the world that would contact each other and sort of figure out what the needs and desires on a day-to-day basis of their respective populations were, and then to allocate resources from various parts of the world to meet those needs. And he supposed that a system which was hyper efficient at doing this would be able to therefore satisfy every human need on the planet, which would therefore abolish the need for ownership. So instead of people owning cars and planes and things, anything that you needed at a given time would be available to you to use on the basis of your need to use it. So rather than having, say, he gives the example of a camera. Instead of having a camera in your home, there will be a place you can go to get a camera, to rent it out for whatever time period you need it, and then you bring it back. And anything that's damaged can be easily repaired. So essentially everyone becomes an engineer. Everyone, which is ironic because, of course, he himself was an engineer. So it's sort of a mixture of like what would be the best society from his perspective, from the perspective of some of this like autistic, mechanistic thinking engineer who's attempting to create a utopia that will provide for all the material needs, but yet he's still trying to solve these problems with materialist solutions. And so, it's sort of, in one of his interviews, he flatly says metaphysics are bullshit. I don't think I have that one. But before I play a clip, I'm going to play an interview of Jacques Fresco on Larry King from 1974. It was a long interview, and it was interesting because Larry King essentially laughs at him. And one of the reasons that I got sucked into this as a teenager was the fact that some of the things that he designed back in the 1970s actually came to fruition, namely the magnetic monorail. He has a design which he presented to Larry King of a magnetic monorail, and that the design was almost identical to the one used in Japan some years ago. So, he was certainly ahead of his time in some of the things that he had proposed, and there's certainly good reason to believe that some of his theories may have been viable. But whether or not these are his theories necessarily, I can't 100% say. Some of these may have been plagiarized, but I don't want to make any accusations. But one thing I do want to say on the behavioral aspect of this, much of the philosophy of the Venus Project, especially when it comes to human behavior, is predicated on misconceptions of the other side. So they will make the admission that there are some genetic predispositions or proclivities that people are born with, but they then assert that they can overcome these through environment by giving people the best education possible, by working with them one-on-one. And so I think I might have Fresco explaining this himself, but the point is, their idea is that genetic determinism says that genes are unchangeable, that if you were born a certain way, that's the way you are, and there's no way to amend this, no way to change this behavior. That's not true. Of course, you can discipline people who are naturally violent or have violent tendencies or aggressive proclivities, whatever. Right? You can do that to a degree, but genetic, I don't know if you want to call it genetic determinism, the people that assert that there is a biological basis for behavior will say to you that there is a range. There's a range of intelligence, there's a range of ferocity or pacifism that people have to work within. So, say for me, for instance, if I were locked in a dark room from an early age, my IQ might be, 85 right now, had that happened to me until, if I was locked in a dark room until I was 16. Had I been educated one-on-one by some Harvard professor from a young age, maybe my IQ would be, 124 or something, whatever it is. That would be my range. So my minimum to my maximum. When I'm capable of learning to when I'm capable of, falling to. That would be my range of intelligence. Whereas someone from the African savannah might have a range of roughly 65 to 100. Say something like that, right? And the fact that people have different ranges, the fact that people may have certain capacities, that once you get to a certain point of education, there are people that simply cannot understand complex mathematical algorithms, formulas, theories, and things like this. This is something that the Venus Project simply ignores. They don't recognize this at all. They believe that because people can become better than what they are, or better than what they are, under a certain, environment that doesn't mitigate their intelligence or their behavior particularly efficiently, that therefore everyone can be uplifted essentially to the point of genius. And this is, of course, false. This is wrong for a number of reasons. But there is a sort of a naivete, a pedantic utopianism to this ideology. But this way of thinking, a lot of people may laugh at it, but this is a way of thinking that persists on the left today. And so it's still very relevant to examine this even now.
The entire money-structured and materialistic-oriented society is a false society. 10 or 15 years from now, our society will go down in history as the lowest development in man. We have the brains, the know-how, the technology, and the feasibility to build an entirely new civilization.
You believe that we teach competition, that it's not bred into someone?
Competition is dangerous, socially offensive, considered right and normal, because you are brought up to that value system. What kind of competition did Jesus have? What kind of competition is there in your body? Suppose your brain said, I'm the most important organ, and the liver said, I am, and I want to go a free enterprise system. You'd rot away in a month if every organ of your body went out for itself. SocioCyberneering does not appeal to governments, to private enterprise. We're going to do this thing just as the automobile phased out the stagecoach, just as television stepped in and phased out the old vaudeville and the old motion pictures, that history and technology is respecters of no society, no individual opinions, but it moves on, and we've got to be prepared to face the future.
In your society, there are no mayors of cities?
There are no mayors, there are no politicians, and you don't have to fill out any forms to go to the arts center or music center, and you go to a university whether you can afford it or not. You don't have to use any of the systems today. Let me briefly say this. You have a bumper in front of your car, behind your car. But your society, your car's hit on the side also. You have safety belts and harnesses in your car. But that assumes that you're going to be hit by the rear or in front. If you're hit on the side, you go right through the side of the windshield. What good are these approaches? They are designed by men that are cerebral insufficients. You've got to design a society with a bumper all around the car, phase out human drivers, put electronic guidance systems in cars, or eliminate the automobile and design a holistic transportation system. We must put our mind to this as we do to put a man on the moon. We must put our mind to the social problem. We wish to get away from politics. We wish to get away from the old world method of solving problems. This is clean sources of power. By utilizing the natural heat of the earth, that is volcanic energy, or the magma, or the molten lava under the earth, of which there are approximately 500 potentials. If we tap a mountain in Hawaii called Mount Aloha, we can get enough power to electrify the world. We can get enough power from that volcano alone. We have 500 potential volcanoes we can harness. We can use that natural heat from the volcano. No smog, no smoke, no dirt, no gases, no fuels, no oil spills, and no more burning of fuels in any city to generate power. If Japan used Fujiyama, they don't need to burn oil. They don't need oil. All of that heat is sitting there, 20 million years of power right under the Earth's surface. In fact, you don't even need to use fusion power or nuclear power. And it's easy to tap, and it's clean and available. And as soon as we make up our minds to put scientists, rather than on weapons, nerve gas, on harnessing the Earth power that is already here, it would take 10 years to change the surface of the Earth, to rebuild the world into a second Garden of Eden. The choice lies with you. The stupidity of a nuclear arms race, the development of weapons, trying to solve your problems politically by electing this political party or that political party, that all politics is immersed in corruption. Let me say it again. Communism, socialism, fascism, the Democrats, the liberals, we want to absorb human beings. Women's lib, all organizations that believe in a better life for man. There are no Negro problems or Polish problems or Jewish problems or Greek problems or women's problems. They're human problems. To come into socio-cyberneering and take your part and function. We are not concerned with the divisions of segments of society.
No control of population?
Population control is dependent upon education. We feel an educated population needs no control.
You wouldn't stop sex?
No, sir.
Good move, Jacques.
Quite frequently, he uses this analogy of organs in the body working together as a way to dismiss notions of competition being beneficial, that people have to work together to form a civilization. And this is very fascistic and very true in a sense, although his way of going about it might be flawed. But what interests me about this is that this was the first time I heard this analogy. The second time I had seen it was in reading Fascism for the Million by Oswald Mosley, where he describes a parliamentary system in which people would vote based on vocation rather than region. So people, farmers vote for a farmer to represent them, fishermen for a fisherman to represent them, engineers, so on, right? And Fresco's idea of a government, or as close to a government as he would be willing to come, was basically a council, a democratic council of experts in their respective fields, who essentially, because of their expertise and because of their knowledge in these things, would have a similar occupation, a similar role in society as determining, like, how do we manufacture things so that they won't break down? How do we make things easily upgraded so that we don't end up having to throw things away unnecessarily? How do we fish the waters so that we don't end up damaging the ecology and running out of fish and polluting the waters and robbing the soil, depleting the soil. And so when you look at this, when you look at the similarities between some of his ideas and the fascist proposals of the 1930s, despite the clear and evident correlations between the Venus Project and communism, there seems to be an era of fascism which Fresco would never overtly admit to, but which seems to permeate some of his language and ideas.
We live in an environment that's so loused up, it's very difficult to generate good feelings between people because they come from different places with a different value system and different needs. In the society of the future, someone asked me, would everybody be alike in your society? Yes, in certain areas. They will love the earth and take care of it, stick their hands out when they meet another person from a different culture and say, your values are different than mine. I'd like to learn more about your way of thinking. They will be the same in that way. They will be open to new ideas, learn to listen to new ideas, ask relevant questions about ideas. Yes, in those areas, they will be alike. Many people have entrusted their decision-making to government. Bingo. And many people have also given that decision-making to the deity. They create a deity, then they say, he will make the most appropriate decision. Prevent my house from burning down, prevent my children from being killed, and help us along the way. But it's going to take time for people to take on the responsibility of managing this wonderful gift of nature, the earth, water, all the wonderful things we have, topsoil, and we have to take care of the earth. We have to assume responsibility. We have brains, and the brains can be programmed in many different directions. They can go into the abstract region, which has nothing to do with improving our lives. We can invent reasons for nature, or we can say, I don't know how nature works, and hold that in abeyance and try to find out. That's the difference between science and religion. Religion has answers. Many different things. The Lord works in strange ways when they can't account for anything. The scientist says, I don't know. And what are you going to do about it? He goes into a lab to try to find out. What's the best shape for a boat? What's the best arrangement for sails to get the most effective movement from the wind? He says, I don't know. So he sets up an experiment. An experiment is truth-seeking, but tangibly truth-seeking. But philosophy and theology, you sit back on an armchair. You say, well, I guess the trees are here to give us oxygen. The science is that the trees are here, they produce oxygen, and that enables us to survive. They're not here for that purpose, because there are many remote islands that have trees without any humans producing oxygen. And there are many tidal waves that go over islands without people on them. So they're not there to punish people.
Humans are amazingly anthropomorphic.
Terribly so.
Oh yeah, it's all about us.
Yeah.
It's all
My
about
mother used to be that. She used to say, the ant is going home to feed its young. I said, how do you know that? Maybe going home to eat its young. Like the spiders, they mate, then the female eats the male. And I'm not talking about pornography. I'm talking about digesting them. Now, the most difficult thing to understand is jealousy. See, so in the future, I'll use an example of Roxanne. If Roxanne fell in love with a younger guy than me, or an older guy than me, there's nobody older than me. Fell in love with a younger or older guy, if that's what she wants, it means that I'm not meeting her needs. And if I love her, really love her, I will help her pack, because that's what she wants. But in this country, we say, God damn it, you're breaking up the home. You're my wife. You're not going to get a leave. I'll break your back. You leave this home. That isn't love. What happens to love during divorce? The wife says, I want the kids in the house. Where's all the love? Where's it gone? Is there really such a thing? No, there's not. Like I said, love fluctuates. So people don't even know how to love. But in the future, the word love will be thrown out and replaced by another word called extensionality. That means if you're a pilot and say your right wing catches fire, if you side slip, you can burn the fire off the wing. So a guy that you meet will say, in case your building catches fire, wet a blanket, lower yourself because smoke rises. That's extensional to you, really extensional, not patriotism. I swear to uphold the Constitution. That is not any measure of patriotism. Patriotism and love is what you do to extend another person's mind or life. A girl is flattered today by you give her jewelry. She says, oh, how wonderful, you shouldn't have done that. Then take it back and see what happens. So it's all a bullshit world. So I'm saying, you know what extensionality means? A person that can extend your ability to understand the world you live in. That's real love. So I say, I think I try to give everybody the best information I have, unless it's commercial. The guy says, in your helicopter, I notice that you don't have an anti-torque propeller. You know what that means? When a helicopter blade goes around, the body tends to turn the other way. So they have a propeller in the back that keeps it straight. But if they say to me, your helicopters don't have that, how come? I don't tell them, because that could be a commercial product. I don't want them to come to my meetings just to take all the wonderful ideas, patent them. That's what they did to me in the past. They used to come up to my table at the aircraft factory, watch what I was working on, and take out patents on it. You understand? They had no conscience.
That's competition.
Well, it's crude, I thought, and cruel. And the aircraft company owns everything you think of. Did you know that? When I go to work for Douglas and invent new things, they own everything I think of. And if some guy makes a new carburetor in his garage and sells it to General Motors, they say, and now General Motors brings you, like General Motors did. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. So inventors in the future will be taken care of like everybody else. They'll live well, drive the best cars the country knows how to turn out. There'll be no junk equipment that breaks down. Because if it breaks down, it's a burden on society. It's a burden on resources. You understand that? So by making, if you drive a Mercedes or some expensive car, and he drives a beat-up old Volkswagen, if his brakes fail, you die. So we don't want any old cars on the road. An old car weighs as much as a new car, so we reprocess it. Do you understand that? Yeah. Guy says, boy, you guys are very nice. No, not we're nice. We don't want anything detrimental out there. So we turn out the best equipment and make it available for everybody. Yeah. Not because we're good Joes. If you work with the less than the best, you hurt people and yourself. Okay. Do you understand that? So kids will have any kind of books free of charge available, made available. Because the smarter the kids are, if they read Jack and the Beanstalk, it's not extension. If they read Cinderella, where she touches a white mouse with a wand and makes it into a horse, you know, if you bring up kids with that kind of shit, they can't be extensional. Or if you say, do you run faster than Billy? Billy feels resented. You understand? So what if you run faster than Billy? When I was a kid in school, kids used to walk over me and says, I can run faster than you. I said, you can probably run twice as fast as me. So they would put up. I can run fast. So what? That's competition. It doesn't do any good. And then there's a guy with a football that runs through the field, and everybody likes sports. It's the same fucking story over and over again. Nothing new. You're running with a football, and people tackle him. As long as they keep you occupied with bullshit like that, you don't move forward. In the future, there's no game that's constant. It's always growing. So when you play tennis against yourself, you get better. And you don't try to get better to beat the other guy. You try to improve your judgment. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Now, if a person is exceptionally creative, very inventive, we put him out in school to teach other kids how to invent. Because he has a method. See, I can teach anyone anything unless their hands are broken or their brain is damaged. I used to work with 50 kids. They'd all get 100. There were no variations in grade. But I worked differently. But if you try to teach kids how to draw, and they look at the other kids drawing, if it's much better than theirs, they don't want to play that game. So I have a partition. And I tell each kid is doing well. You're doing very well. And they all move up slowly. Then in about 3 weeks, they're all good. Then I take away that thing. Yeah. See, you have to know that if I say to you, why can't you be like your brother, if I'm your father? He cleans everything up, and you leave everything around. So when your brother falls down the stairs, you got a grin on his face. Because he's been mistreated. So you never, when you raise children, hold up one kid as your favorite. Then you make jealousy and envy. When you give kids grades in school, I give you an F for failure. He gets an A. He says, I got an A. And everybody in school knows, what grade did you get? So there you get bad feelings. All wrong. You never grade people. You upgrade those that are behind. You use the kids that know how to do things faster. Now, if you ask people, how do you become creative? They don't know. We know. So we make everybody creative.
I still find myself agreeing with a lot of what Fresco says. And I have to admit that I did learn a lot from him, especially from his earlier lectures. But just a couple of points here. We see when he is describing love as extensionality, this systemic troubleshooting of problems applied to human relationships. He sort of assumes that the only contribution that a person makes to your life is material, right? They're giving you knowledge you didn't have before. They're making things easier for you. They're keeping you safe. Well, there are emotional attachments that people have, and this is what he sort of ignores. He's treating people as though they're machines, and this is just not realistic. Jealousy exists for good reason. It evolved in us as a way of protecting the people that we care about and protecting ourselves from heartbreak, in a sense. But Jacques' idea is like, no, you just go wherever you want, do whatever you want. There's no reason for this. Romanticism is bullshit. Metaphysics are bullshit. all of these things that really drove us to create the greatest architectural and artistic and philosophical works in human history. He just throws all that out because from an engineering standpoint, none of those things are valuable. So that's sort of a problem I have with that. And then when he talks about jealousy and competition, you know, when he talks about parenting, I think he's very correct, and his teaching methods sound, you know, very, very useful. I'm not denouncing those, but what I will say is, like there are a lot of people who are complacent in being what they are. You assume that these people want to improve, that they want to get better in their judgment or whatever they're doing. A lot of people are just content to be where they are, and competition gives you the drive to be better because you want to be either better than or as good as someone who is perhaps on your level or slightly above your level at whatever it is, tennis or chess or whatever. So these are motivating factors. These are emotional things that you really can't quantify and measure through this sort of systemic autistic analysis of human behavior. And that, I think, is what falls short in Jacques Fresco's analysis of human psychology.
Okay. The discussion today is about depression. There are many people that have been depressed for many years, and I get lots of letters. And sometimes they say that I found no meaning in life, no purpose, and you pulled me out of it. I get a lot of letters like that. So that's the only thing I can say. It's not due to genetics. If it was due to genetics, I couldn't pull them out. Does that make sense to you? Now, what is depression? If you live vicariously through another person, let's say you rely on that person entirely, you live and that person dies, you lose your identity because you put your identity in another person, which isn't a good thing to do. That's a kind of dependency, you know what I mean? So that's part of depression, a little bit of it. The rest is loss of identity. And you can lose your identity if you're brought up with a philosophy of life that doesn't reinforce you. If you're brought up with a set of values, do the right thing and everything will work out all right. And if it doesn't work out all right, you become depressed because you lose predictability. Is that clear? If you have predictability about yourself and other people, you can anticipate certain things. But if you have no answers, if you look for answers in your own mind, it isn't exposed enough. There's not enough in schools that give you a way of thinking so you can solve problems. Because it isn't that they don't want to, they don't have it. They've never found a way of thinking that can solve problems. That's why when the businessman retires, he may become depressed because he has no game to play. All his life, say a guy that owns a jewelry store that sells jewelry, and every sale makes him feel good. Then he retires. And he has nothing anymore. He has no identity except sales of jewelry. Do you understand? That's gone. What follows is depression. There are some dogs that have been depressed due to they had a very close relationship with their master. When the master dies, they sat next to the master and wouldn't go away and bark at anybody that would try to take them away. Because their full identification was as a team with their master. They had no identification when the master died. They had no way of looking at it. The difference between humans and most animals don't fear death. They don't even know there is such a thing. But they move away from animals that are larger than they are. That's a reflex. But they don't know what death is, nor do they think of it. So far, any questions? Okay. So a person that asks themselves questions, why did my wife leave me? And they can't figure it out because everything they've done was pleasing. And they don't understand it. That is not necessarily a logical question. Your wife may have left you for many different reasons. That she likes a guy tall with blonde wavy hair, or stocky, or whatever. And if you don't meet that image, she might leave you. The assumption that she won't leave you is what can depress you. Your assumption about the world, surely they won't have another war while they're having a war now. You can't say that. You can say, I'd like to see peace on earth, so you work toward it. But if you hope there's peace on earth, you might get depressed by the next war. See, when people say to me, when will the Venus Project be built? The honest answer is I don't know. I don't even know if we'll get there. But I can't accept what I see, so I try to intervene. Intervening, does that mean we'll have a better world? Not necessarily. Whatever you get is what you get. Do you understand that? The assumptions, surely people can all see the logic of a one global society. No, they can't. That's a major problem. So you use different techniques to try to get them oriented toward that. Okay, so what is depression and how do you get rid of it? If you're depressed, it means you're looking within yourself for answers, and you can't get that. How did I get it? I didn't find it in psychology books at all. Here's how I got it. I sat down and I said, what is depression? I said, I don't know. How can I know what it is? But a depressed person always seems to have a low self-image. Do you know what that means? I'm not getting anywhere in life. I'm not respected. 3 girls left me, whatever it is. It's a low self-sufficiency to start with. Now, instead of looking for the girl of your dreams, you try to make her. You know what that means? Educate her in whatever way you can. Doesn't mean it'll work perfectly, no. But it'll work better than you doing nothing. Do you understand that? Therefore, depression is not only loss of self-image, they have none. The guy finds himself in the Marines and he wants to be successful in the Marines, and that can't bring success. Unless they give you medals and everybody pats you on the back. That's your self-image. I made it, you can say. Or an actor that does a theater actor that acts before an audience, a live audience, and they applaud after. That makes him feel good. A movie, he doesn't know. If he works in a movie, he doesn't know that people are going to applaud. Do you understand that? Therefore, he could encounter depression. Anybody that does any routine, a job, a jeweler, a plumber, an artist, a painter, if they don't get reward for their painting, like you're a genius, you're good creative, that makes them go on painting. But when people say, what the hell is that supposed to be? If they paint because they like to paint, that's much better if that occurs. If you go for a walk because you like to go for a walk, not because the doctor told you to go for a walk every day, at least a half hour. But if you don't do it because you want to do it, if you go out for a walk through the country and you smell the trees and you look around and you're pleased by that, do it. If it depresses you going for a walk, you have to restore the self-image. In most instances, there is no self-image. So you have to give them a self-image. You have to talk about a lot of things. But say, gee, I didn't know that water became ice suddenly. I thought it was gradually it became ice. Well, whatever it is, if you expose them to different branches of science and they begin to find answers that satisfy them, their self-image grows. But if you make a Lutheran of a person and says, have faith in God, He'll look after you, if you put that faith in somebody you can't see or touch, it may carry you through. because you know there's somebody up there that loves you, even though nobody does. That there is somebody up there. That helps some people, but it's not genuine help. Do you understand? Because he says to the minister, what did I do wrong? If you believe in right and wrong, you can get depressed. I must have done the wrong thing. It isn't the wrong thing that you do. It's a less valid thing that you do. It's a less appropriate thing that you do. Do you know what I mean? Not wrong. If you work on something, snap out of that depression. Have faith in yourself and confidence. Well, they might fall, gee, you sound great, but that doesn't take away the self-image. You don't take away the self-image, you add to it. You understand what that means? Whatever the person is. They only have no self-image. They don't know who they are, so they want to take, if you're in pain, that's different. I'm not talking about that. If you have a tumor growing in your lungs and you can hardly breathe, that's something else. That's not depression. That's physical disability. But if you have your health and you feel that you're learning something every day, don't ever assume that you can fix something too. You can try to fix it. I'm going to try to fix it. If that doesn't work, you come at it another way. If that doesn't work, say, I can't handle it. I need more information in that area. That's what self-confidence is. The more genuine information a person has in certain areas, people that do feel, I can't get up before 100 people and say something because I worry about whether I'll goof and they'll laugh at me, you know. Here's how you handle that. You never talk to people to win approval. You talk to people to inform. If you were in a building, you were in the hallway, and a big beam fell on fire, you can go in for 1,000 people, say exit as fast as you can, there's a fire, and you don't feel bad about it. Because what you're saying is essential to their well-being. But when you gamble and you say, I don't believe in God, at a church meeting, they can all say, what? You know, they're not going to say, how do you account for all this? They don't even do that. If they don't do that, there's no bridge. You have to build a bridge. Even a religious person, when they get a window cranking, they crank it, the window doesn't open, they take it back to the company. They need verification. When they buy something, the guy says, if you buy this window, it's hurricane proof because it's a sheet of plastic between two sheets of glass, so you can't smash it with an object. And you have to give the person with a low self-sufficiency a high self-sufficiency by giving them a direction, or her, so they don't concentrate on themselves. I've been working all these years and I have nothing to show for it. Did you assume that you would have something? What you have to do is engage in self-image and asking questions. Why am I depressed? Why do I feel insufficient in the crowd? Because I'm hoping the crowd will like what I say. I don't give a shit. If they believe the earth is flat and I find out it's round, I enjoy telling them it's round. If they refuse it, that's their problem, not mine. But if you feel you are unsuccessful in presenting an idea, the assumption that you will be successful is depressing. Do you understand that? That's what makes depression. When you do something and nothing happens. When you row a boat, it doesn't move. If you can get in a boat that you don't know how to use the oar and it doesn't move, you get depressed. When you pull on the string and the motor doesn't start, what the hell, you pull it on until it does start. Or you learn that you might have to change the spark plug. It might have a shorter gap or a longer gap, and you bring the gap closer together so you have a spark. If you don't know those basic things, you can kick the lawnmower. We tend to project living human characteristics into things. Sometimes if your binoculars don't work, you throw them on the couch. You know what I mean? Because you get mad at the binoculars. You give it a personality. God damn it, you should work. I paid $40 for it. That's why it should work. No, you paid $40 and it doesn't work. So you take it back. Or you leave it until you go into town again. But throwing it on the couch or the floor doesn't make it work. Sometimes, if there's a loose wire in your TV set, you kick the set and the wire, it'll go on again. And so sometimes that carries on that type of value system. I think I covered everything related to depression. It's a low self-image, or no self-image, or looking for justice.
Many of the people at the time who supported the Venus Project, and we're talking 10 years ago when I was aware of this, these people were very cultish, and they would defend Fresco's ideas without hesitation. And if you so much as questioned any of the foundational arguments or concepts, oftentimes you'd be met with vitriol and hatred, not from Fresco himself. He never promoted this idea, but this was the sort of following that the Venus Project ultimately cultivated. And I think this is part of the reason why it never became very popular, because it just seemed like a cult. You have one figurehead at the top, essentially giving out all the ideas regardless of where those ideas are coming from. And you have a base of people who are just blindly following it and not really questioning and not really antagonizing these ideas. And so this was a problem. And I think this is one of the reasons why so few people have even ever heard of this, despite all of their efforts, despite the fact that this is something that has been around for so long. And the reason for those, I don't think I covered this in the beginning of the video, the reason why they call it the Venus Project is because they spent 10 years cultivating land in Venus, Florida, to build the buildings, to create basically a big park, a big theme park, devoted to showcasing Fresco's ideas. They built the buildings that he designed. They dug out waterways, and I believe it took them 10 years, just him and Roxanne Meadows doing this together. And this is where they lived for many years. But most places, because it seemed like a cult, most cities wouldn't allow them to set this up. And so Venus, Florida, being the only place that would allow them to, they decided to rename SocioCyberneering to the Venus Project as a sort of homage or a thank you to the city for allowing them to do this. And for a long time, I think you probably still can. You can go there and pay, I think it's like $100 or something, to tour the grounds, and I think they give you books or something written by Fresco, or maybe they try to sell them to you now. But a lot of people I've seen have had bad experiences going there. They felt like they were being goaded into buying more than what they wanted to buy, or being sort of fleeced for money because they had so few supporters, and because, as they said, it's so expensive to keep this land up. Despite the fact that this is a system which says we want to get rid of money. We don't want a monetary system at all. It's sort of ironic that they were so heavily dependent on finances. But yes, I don't believe that Fresco himself was simply some Jim Jones type figure who didn't believe what he said. Someone who devotes that much time and energy into developing something like this has to have some degree of conviction in it. He has to actually, to invest that much in it, he has to believe, at least to some degree, that what he's doing is doing some good. And so it is kind of sad. This man lived to be, I think it was 108 or something like that. He lived a very long life, and he really had nothing to show for it at the end of it. Even if he was Jewish, the guy clearly had good intentions, and he was very much a humanitarian. And despite the fact that his ideas were very flawed and lacked an understanding, I think, of fundamental human behavior and had no concept of romanticism or metaphysics, I think there's a lot that we can learn, not only about how human beings behave and about relationships from him. I think we can learn a lot about leftism and the sort of humanitarian utopian views that so many of these anarcho-syndicalist or Marxist-Leninists seem to subscribe to. The idea of, like Fresco believed in a one world people, one world government, and everyone is living in harmony and peace and earth, and the whole world is just one big UNICEF commercial. And this is essentially what leftist ideology is today. And despite the fact that the Venus Project differentiates itself from this, you can see that it's really just a more sophisticated and rather more scientific version of modern leftism. So yeah, it's a very interesting thing to examine. I encourage everyone to watch the movie Zeitgeist Moving Forward. It was produced by Peter Joseph. I don't recommend you watch any of the other Zeitgeist movies for various reasons, but this one was a standalone film, and it was devoted to the Venus Project. And yeah, listen to that, and maybe a few of his lectures if you're interested in this. But yeah, I wanted to make this video because this is really where I came from. I believed in this when I was a teenager. I believed in this wholeheartedly, and I was very much involved. I listened to every lecture of Fresco's. I read much of what he wrote, and I was absolutely enthralled by this when I first found it as a younger man. And it's sort of, I guess, therapeutic for me to go back to this to see, what I was goaded into believing when I was a young, naive teenager, and to see like what were the problems with this. What was it that this man who lived for over 100 years and stuck to his guns all that time, what was he missing? What was missing from his formula? And unfortunately, there was quite a bit missing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. It's going to be a long one, but I always appreciate all of you. And I apologize for the botched stream, but I hope this makes up for it. So yeah, thank you, and good night.